Good Thursday morning. Guess it just a quick one. I got to get off to church in a few minutes. The gospel today is interesting. It's simple. Okay, so Jesus withdrew toward the sea. Say Mark. Okay, with his disciples. A large crowd of people followed from Galilee and from Judea. Hearing what he was doing, a large number of people came to him, also from Jerusalem, from Idumea, from beyond the Jordan, and from the neighborhood of Tyre and Sidon. So they were all coming to him. He told his disciples to have a boat ready for him because of the crowd, so that they would not crush him. And he cured many. That's so important. As a result, those who had diseases were pressing upon him to touch him. Whenever unclean spirits saw him, they would fall down before him and shout, "You are the Son of God." He warned them sternly not to make him known. But I'm thinking about the boat. And I'm teasing. I like to scooch around and tease about that because I want to say, was it a bass boat or runabout? What'd you have there? You know what I mean? Whatever. Okay? See, I share that with him. I had a boat too, okay? Among other things. But whatever, the boat is the boat of Peter. That's the church, okay? And Christ, in the sea of life, the crowdedness of life, I'm fooling around with the analogy. In the church, Christ preaches to the world through the church. So he preaches from the boat. See? And that's the truth, the bark of Peter. See? It's also the bark of Christ, you see. And I think that is so important. That the church is the healer, the preacher of the word. She preaches to the crowd in need, and they came because the world sought redemption, wholeness. That's the truth. And I think we live in an age right now that we're on the edge of such an age. As the church and Christianity, and really religion in general, in so many ways seems to be dying throughout the world, and especially in the West, Europe and America. Another way it's not. It's sometimes when it seems most impoverished that it is most alive and its richest, because it doesn't preach from within a culture in the safety and the comfort of a culture when she is counterculture, when she has to back away, as it were, from the crowd in the boat to speak to the crowd. I'm fooling around with that analogy, but I actually think we're in an age, we're at the edge of a great new age of the restoration of religion, especially Christianity, because I think as the old order has passed away, and I think the impoverishment of our culture that's occurred and its crassness, what it's become. I hate the words like materialism and all that stuff, but we have really, really become a people in need. That's why you see so many messianic figures popping up, because people are lonesome. I'm talking about pseudo-messiahs. See? And the church, I think, has had to readdress herself to the world. Now as healer. That's John the 23rd. I kept banging on that, but I think it's the truth. And she now has to preach to the world, to the suffering of the world, a world of healing, a word of healing, not a world, but a word of healing. I mean that, of compassion, of tenderness and love, of homecoming, of welcoming, not out of fear of damnation, but of a love for life itself. The church should be the voice of love and the love of life, in the fullness of life, now and forevermore. I mean that, a word of healing compassion. That's Christ in the boat, preaching to the crowd and healing. Not just preaching at, but from, in a sense, to it, a word of intimacy to the world. The church steps back only to be intimate. So she steps back, and the boat is off the shore in order to be able to reach all on the shore. Maybe that's the analogy. And what is she doing? She preaches a word of redemption and love and healing. I really believe that. I think we're in a really an interesting age. I think we're maybe I'm wrong, but I think we're in the age of rebirth now. I really mean that. I think the old order, while it served its purposes, is dead. And I sure the hell don't want to see us go back to it. I don't want to see us go back to the rigorisms of the 50s. Just there's a number of people, they call themselves traditionalists. And I don't know exactly what that means, because I'm a traditionalist. That is, Christianity, like Judaism, is a narrative. And it is rooted in traditio, a tradition with a capital T. But it doesn't mean replicating a past era. It means the tradition of the preaching of the gospel and the exercise of the sacraments of healing in the world. And each age emerges its own modus servandi, a way of serving. What worked 50 years ago, 70 years ago, may and may not work now. I don't know. I don't think so. I think we have to reinvigorate. I don't know the right word, but we have to address the world as a companion in the world. Is that right? By suffering with the world, preaching a word of healing. Christ backs up from the crowd in order to speak to the crowd, but he doesn't separate himself from the crowd. He heals the crowd. He heals them through his word and his touch, and they touch him. When you touch Christ, you touch life itself. It's a great line. It's Barbra Streisand. He touched me and nothing is the same. He touched me and nothing is the same. If you touch Christ, nothing is the same. If Christ touches you, nothing is the same. And it isn't bad. It is life-giving good. That's really true. I think in many instances, some instances, I don't know. In my generation, the ones who left the faith, I think they left because it turned out to be so hollow. In the end, it was so hollow. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they liked it and it changed, and they'd rather have what it used to be and gave it up. I don't know. But the present generation is more restless than my generation. And I think they're in search. Even the ones that leave, they leave with a restlessness, not out of rejection. Some cases, yes, flat out rejection and anger. Maybe a feeling that the church betrayed them. I don't know. I actually believe that. But I think there's also a restlessness underneath it all, looking for something that is more than what they've got. So our young generations have tasted the sweetness of life and found it wanting at a very early age. That's the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of redemption, is to recognize the limit of life itself and the good that we possess. And that doesn't take away its good, but we realize it is unsatisfying. It is not sufficiently satisfying. And that's the beginning of wisdom. That's the truth. And I think our younger people today are tasting that because they have tasted the sweetness of life so early in their lives and found it insufficient, wanting, in other words. I believe that, and I think it's been true for the last 20 or 30 years. I believe that. And then went on the retreat work. Retreat work 50 years ago, you began to see it. One of Father Nick Zetz, God, he was a great preacher. God, he was the best I ever heard. He coined it. He said, these kids, this is 50 years ago. These guys are 70 years old now, 65, 70 years. He said, I remember him saying about a group of kids, he said, they have already tasted the sweetness of life and found it wanting. What a great line. See, that's either the beginning of despair or the beginning of hope. But you're going to have to choose. Once the emptiness of passing values is tasted and recognized, then you either have to give up on life or you have to reach for more. There has to be more. The faith gives you more. It gives you the hope of eternity and time as opposed to the mere perishing of time, putting it philosophically. That's the truth. I think we're in the age in which we are in search of eternity. Yes, the triumph of an eternal good or the fleetingness of temporal evil. I really mean that. And it's not on the grand scale of war, but in one's personal heart. We have tasted the sweetness and found it wanting.